Millionaire's attempt to change his life with a single bet leads to the most unbelievable twist ever. What if a single bet, made in the heat of the moment, could change everything? What if that one decision, meant to shift the course of your life, spiraled into a twisted game where power, trust, and loyalty are shattered beyond repair? This isn't just any ordinary bet. This is the kind of wager that has the potential to topple kingdoms, destroy friendships, and ignite a chain of events that no one, least of all the man who initiated it, could ever predict. In today's story, a millionaire decides to gamble on a bet he believes will be the turning point of his life, but what follows is a shocking twist that will make him question everything he thought he knew about control, fate, and power. In today's video, we witness the gripping rise and fall of Richard Ward, a millionaire whose arrogance and desire for change lead him down a dangerous path. At first, it seems like a harmless wager, something he could easily win, a quick fix to his increasingly boring and predictable life. He believes that if he wins, not only will he change his circumstances, but he'll finally assert his dominance over those around him. But what starts as a simple bet soon turns into something far more insidious. Richard's opponent, a seemingly ordinary man with no apparent stake in the high-stakes world Richard inhabits, soon reveals an unexpected depth and cunning that catches Richard off guard. What Richard thought would be a quick win becomes a deadly game of wits, power, and manipulation. The stakes are raised higher than he could have ever imagined, and as the game unfolds, Richard discovers that the one thing he can't control is the very thing that could destroy him, the people he's underestimated. The setting is as sleek and polished as Richard's life, a luxurious penthouse overlooking the glittering skyline. The modern furnishings reflect the cold precision of Richard's carefully constructed empire. Yet, despite the lavish surroundings, there's a tension in the air, a heaviness that permeates every corner of the room. Richard stands by the window, looking out, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the glass. The city lights blink below him, but they do nothing to ease the mounting pressure he feels. Richard's life has always been one of control. He's always been the one pulling the strings, whether in business or in personal matters. But tonight, something feels different. A sense of unease settles in his stomach, gnawing at him. His recent decisions haven't yielded the satisfaction they once did. Even his relationships feel like transactional exchanges rather than genuine connections. And then there's the bet, the one that was meant to shake things up, to reassert his control, to remind everyone that Richard Ward doesn't lose. He turns away from the window, his sharp eyes scanning the room as his mind races. His opponent has yet to arrive. As he paces back and forth, Richard tries to quell the rising discomfort in his chest. For once, he's not entirely in charge. He's placed his fate in the hands of someone else, and as each minute passes, the feeling of vulnerability creeps in. A powerful man like him shouldn't be feeling this way. But there it is, like a shadow lurking just out of sight. The doorbell rings. Richard pauses, his breath catching for just a moment. The doorbell rings again. This is it, the moment he's been waiting for, and yet he can't shake the feeling that everything is about to change. He walks toward the door, his steps deliberate but slow, as if he's walking toward his own fate. But what if the game they are about to play isn't just about winning or losing? What if it's about something far deeper? What if the stakes are higher than Richard could ever have imagined? The door creaks open. Standing in the doorway is a man who, to Richard's surprise, seems almost too calm for the situation at hand. A man with nothing to lose, and perhaps everything to gain. As they lock eyes, Richard feels a strange shiver down his spine. The man before him doesn't look like the sort of person who would gamble his life on a bet. But there's something about him, something unsettling, that Richard can't quite place. What happens next will change everything. The penthouse is as cold and sterile as the life Richard has built for himself. Floor-to-ceiling windows reveal the sprawling city beneath, a city that feels both familiar and distant. The lights flicker in the distance, casting an eerie glow that reflects off the polished marble floors. It's late in the evening, and the silence in the room is suffocating. The weight of the moment presses down on Richard Ward as he stands by the window, hands clasped behind his back, staring out at the glowing skyline. Everything in this space screams success, sleek furniture, expensive art on the walls, the faint scent of luxury cologne in the air. Yet none of it brings him peace. The emptiness of the room mirrors the emptiness inside him. Despite all the wealth, the fame, the admiration, Richard feels something missing, a void that he can't quite fill. Every choice he's made has brought him here, to this moment, standing in this lonely room, waiting for a confrontation he has no control over. There is a tense stillness that fills the space, almost like the calm before a storm. Richard's mind races as his fingers twitch in frustration. The deal that was supposed to change everything now feels like a reckless gamble, a move to regain some semblance of excitement in his otherwise predictable life. The door to the penthouse opens quietly. His opponent, the man who's about to turn Richard's life upside down, steps into the room. The atmosphere shifts instantly. The silence is broken, and the game is about to begin. Richard's pulse quickens as he turns to face the man who has just entered. This is the moment he's been waiting for, the moment when he regains control. His life, once defined by careful calculation and perfect execution, now hinges on a single bet. But despite his outward confidence, a flicker of doubt stirs deep inside him. He's always been in control, always been the one calling the shots. But this time, he's not so sure. The man standing before him doesn't look like someone Richard can manipulate. There's no arrogance in his eyes, no sense of inferiority. Instead, there's an unsettling calmness about him, a quiet confidence that Richard can't ignore. The man's relaxed demeanor contrasts sharply with Richard's own growing anxiety. Every instinct tells Richard that he's stepping into dangerous territory, yet he refuses to back down. The man's name is Tom. He's the kind of person Richard would have never bothered with in the past, an outsider, a man without connections or wealth. But somehow, Tom has gained something Richard has always craved, an unwavering sense of self, and for that reason, Richard can't stand him. Tom, on the other hand, seems unfazed by the grandeur of the penthouse or the tension in the room. His eyes are calm, calculating. But there's something else there, something deeper, a hint of a past that Richard doesn't know about, and perhaps something that Richard will soon regret underestimating. Richard's mind races, trying to assess the situation. He's used to being in charge, used to calling the shots. But tonight, he's made a dangerous bet, and it's clear that Tom holds all the cards. The tension is thick between them, and Richard can feel it. It's a battle of wills, one that Richard wasn't prepared for. Richard can't stand the silence any longer. The anticipation is killing him, and for the first time in a long while, he feels uncertain. Finally, he speaks, his voice laced with frustration. "What do you want from me, Tom? This whole thing, you've got me playing your game, and I don't even know the rules. What's your angle?" Tom stands there, his arms crossed, not in a defensive stance, but rather one of casual indifference. He doesn't immediately respond, letting the tension build before he speaks, his voice calm, measured. "What do I want from you, Richard?" he says slowly. "Nothing. I don't need anything from you. You're the one who came to me." Richard's eyebrows furrow as he tries to process Tom's words. The lack of aggression, the lack of emotion. Tom is doing everything that Richard himself would do to gain the upper hand, but Richard's not in control of the situation, and it's unnerving. The anger surges in Richard's chest. His hand clenches into a fist. "You're making this into something bigger than it needs to be. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but I don't like it. I always win, Tom. That's how it works. So what's the catch?" Tom doesn't flinch. "You're right about one thing, Richard. You always win. But sometimes it's not about winning. Sometimes it's about losing." The words hit Richard like a punch to the gut. He's not used to hearing this. He's not used to being challenged in such a direct, yet unthreatening way. The air around him feels heavier now, the pressure mounting. His entire life has been a series of calculated moves, each one designed to guarantee success. But this feels different. As the silence lingers between them, Richard begins to feel the ground shifting beneath him. The bet he thought was a way to control his destiny suddenly seems like a desperate attempt to recapture something he's lost, something he didn't even realize was gone until now. The stakes are higher than he expected, and the man standing before him is no longer just an opponent, is a force that Richard doesn't fully understand. Tom's eyes meet his, and for the first time, Richard feels like he's the one being judged. "Let me remind you, Richard," Tom says, his tone still calm, "this isn't a game about control. This is about something much bigger. And I'm afraid you're not going to like what happens next." Richard feels a knot tighten in his stomach. He has no idea what Tom is talking about, But the unease has grown into something darker, something he can't shake. This isn't just a bet anymore, it's a reckoning. And Richard's about to lose far more than he ever thought possible. As the days go by, Richard finds himself increasingly consumed by frustration. The penthouse, once a sanctuary of wealth and solitude, now feels like a gilded cage. His thoughts are clouded with the consequences of the bet he made, a bet that seemed like a brilliant idea at the time but now feels like an anchor, pulling him down into deeper waters. He thought he could control the situation, outsmart the man who had thrown the challenge at him, but instead is watching his carefully constructed life unravel. The more Richard tries to assert his dominance, the more he feels like he's losing grip on everything. Every conversation with Tom feels like a battle, and with each passing moment, Richard feels smaller, weaker, more exposed. What started as an effort to regain control has instead become a spiraling descent into uncertainty. He doesn't know why, but every time he looks Tom in the eye, he feels as if he's playing a game he didn't sign up for, and worse, a game he's losing. At first, Richard had believed that with enough money, influence, and power, he could bend the world to his will. He built his empire on the idea that control was the most important thing. But now, standing in front of Tom, he realizes that control is slipping through his fingers like sand. The frustration gnaws at him, keeping him awake at night, tossing and turning in the grand, empty bed he's come to hate. There are moments when Richard doubts himself, but he quickly pushes those thoughts aside. A man like him can't afford weakness. He forces himself to stay focused, reminding himself that this is just a bump in the road, a temporary setback. But deep down, a seed of doubt has been planted. He's always been able to outmaneuver his opponents. Why does this one feel different? The turning point comes one evening when Richard can no longer ignore the simmering tension between him and Tom. Tom has been biding his time, playing Richard's game but never fully revealing his intentions. The entire situation is driving Richard to the brink of insanity. The manipulation, the mind games, it all feels like a giant chessboard, and Richard is losing the pieces one by one. The two of them meet again in the penthouse. Richard's patience is wearing thin, and this time is determined to get answers. He doesn't care about the rules anymore. He wants to end this game, one way or another. Enough of this, Richard says, his voice rising with barely contained anger. You've been toying with me long enough. Tom, what's your endgame? What do you want from me? Tom looks at him, his face calm, unaffected by Richard's outburst. He stands with his arms crossed, a small smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. You still don't get it, do you, Richard? His voice is low, almost pitying. You're not in control here. You never were. Richard's anger flares. Don't talk to me like that. I've built everything I have. You think you can just walk in here and take it all away? Tom steps closer, his eyes locked onto Richard's. You think I'm here to take something from you? No, Richard, you've already lost it all. This, Tom gestures to the opulence around them, isn't what matters. You've lost yourself, and that's what I'm here to make you see. Richard's breath catches in his throat, his mind racing to process the words. His gut tightens with a mix of fear and confusion. What the hell are you talking about? His voice cracks slightly. Tom leans in, his voice cold and deliberate. You've spent your entire life thinking you could control everything. But you're wrong. You were never in control, Richard. And now it's too late to change. The words hit Richard like a punch to the stomach. He stumbles back, as if physically wounded by the weight of what Tom is saying. The realization crashes over him. He isn't in control. He never was. This whole time, he's been playing into Tom's hands without even knowing it. It's in that moment, standing in the penthouse with Tom's words echoing in his head, that Richard comes to a harrowing realization. The empire he built, the wealth he accumulated, the influence he so carefully curated, all of it has been an illusion. He thought he could control the game, but in reality, he's been a pawn, caught up in a much larger game than he could have ever imagined. The thought is overwhelming. The very core of Richard's identity, his belief in his own power and ability to manipulate the world around him, begins to crumble. All his life, he's been the one in charge, the one who pulled the strings. But now, faced with Tom's calm, unwavering certainty, Richard sees that his success has been nothing more than a series of carefully managed risks that were bound to catch up with him eventually. He feels small, insignificant. For the first time in a long time, Richard isn't sure of himself. The realization sinks in slowly, painfully. This isn't a game he can win. He's not the mastermind here. He's not the one pulling the strings. And as that truth settles in, Richard feels a creeping sense of helplessness. He's been outsmarted, and there's nothing he can do to stop it. As the realization hits him, Richard's mind begins to race, trying to find a way out of the mess he's in. He tries to force the pieces back together to regain some semblance of control, but it's no use. The danger he faces is far greater than he ever anticipated. The stakes have escalated, and with each passing moment, they grow higher. Tom has no intention of backing down. In fact, the more Richard struggles, the more Tom seems to enjoy the power shift. Every word Richard speaks, every move he makes, Tom watches with a quiet intensity, as if he's waiting for Richard to fully comprehend what's happening. Tom doesn't need to play the game anymore. He's already won. Richard's world is crashing down around him, and the more he tries to repair it, the more he realizes how broken it truly is. His business dealings begin to unravel, stocks plummet, investors pull out, and his reputation starts to tarnish. Even his personal relationships begin to fray. The life he's so carefully constructed is slipping through his fingers like sand, and no matter how hard he clings to it, it's gone. The more Richard learns, the more he understands that Tom's presence in his life isn't just an inconvenience, it's a harbinger of everything Richard has failed to see. His empire is no longer secure. His identity is no longer intact. And the worst part, he can't do anything about it. The stakes have escalated to the point where Richard is no longer fighting for control, he's fighting for survival. The question now is not whether he can outmaneuver Tom, but whether he can escape the wreckage of his own life. The air inside Richard's penthouse is thick with tension. The lights are dim, casting long shadows across the marble floors. He stands by the window, staring out at the sprawling city below, but his mind is elsewhere, somewhere dark, filled with confusion and regret. The night has been quiet, but for Richard, the silence is deafening. His world is crumbling piece by piece, and he feels completely powerless to stop it. His thoughts keep circling back to Tom and the bet, the wager that had seemed like a way to change his life, a way to prove his superiority, to regain control. But the longer he reflects, the more he realizes that he's never been in control. Tom had been the true architect of this chaos from the start. Richard was just a pawn in a game he didn't understand. It's been weeks since that fateful day when everything began to spiral. Richard has tried to regain some semblance of order in his life, but every time he thinks he's found a foothold, the ground beneath him shifts. He's a man drowning in his own hubris, and the more he fights against the current, the deeper he sinks. Every conversation with Tom, every encounter with his inner circle, has only served to remind him of how much is lost. His business deals are collapsing. The empire he once controlled now feels like a house of cards ready to fall. But it's not just the money or the power that's slipping away, it's his sense of self. The man he once was is disappearing, replaced by someone he doesn't recognize. As the night stretches on, Richard's sense of dread deepens. He can feel something big coming, something that will change everything. He doesn't know what it is yet, but he knows it's imminent. And as if on cue, there's a knock on the door. The truth is unveiled. Richard opens the door to find Tom standing there, looking as calm and collected as ever. But this time, there's something different in Tom's demeanor, something darker, more serious. He steps into the penthouse without waiting for an invitation, his eyes scanning the room as if he owns it. "Are you ready to face the truth, Richard?" Tom asks, his voice cold and matter-of-fact. Richard doesn't know how to respond. He's been waiting for this moment. But now that it's here, he can't shake the feeling that everything is about to unravel. "What do you mean?" he manages to say, his voice betraying his uncertainty. Tom takes a step closer, his eyes locking onto Richard's with an intensity that makes his heart race. "You think I've been playing games, don't you?" Tom continues, "that this whole thing is just some petty revenge. But you're wrong. This goes much deeper than that." Richard's mind races as he tries to make sense of Tom's words. He's had enough of cryptic remarks and insinuations. "What are you talking about?" he demands, his patience wearing thin. "Just say it." Tom doesn't hesitate. "You think you're the one who's been controlling everything. But in reality, you've been the one being played." Richard's heart skips a beat, his hands tightening into fists. Enough with the riddles, he snaps. What do you want from me? Tom's gaze hardens. I don't want anything from you, Richard. But I'm about to show you something that will change everything. You owe me that much. You owe me the truth. He pulls out a small folder from his jacket, tossing it onto the coffee table in front of Richard. Look at it, Tom says, his tone unyielding. Richard's hands tremble as he opens the folder, scanning the contents. The documents inside are official, legal papers, financial records, and something that makes Richard's blood run cold, a detailed account of his father's shady business dealings. The truth hits him like a ton of bricks. His father had been involved in a financial scandal that destroyed an entire family's livelihood, and it's all connected to Richard's own rise to power. Tom watches him intently, his expression unreadable. Do you recognize those names? He asks. Richard's throat goes dry as he stares at the documents. The names are familiar, names is seen in board meetings, on legal papers, in the files of his company. But there's something more. The records show that Richard's father was directly responsible for a series of financial decisions that led to the downfall of another powerful family. And one of those names, one of the victims, was Tom's. The realization hits him hard. This isn't just about business. This is personal. Character's reaction to the reveal. Richard stands frozen, the document slipping from his hands as his mind races to process what he's just learned. His heart pounds in his chest, and for the first time in a long time, he feels a deep sense of shame, a feeling he's never allowed himself to experience before. He stumbles backward, the weight of the revelation bearing down on him like a 1,000-pound weight. His breath comes in shallow gasps, and he feels like he's suffocating. The truth is too much to bear. His mind flashes back to the years of his father's dealings, the legacy of power and wealth that Richard inherited, never questioning how it was built. His father's name had been synonymous with success, with dominance, but now it's clear that all of it came at the cost of someone else's destruction. Someone whose life had been ruined by Richard's own family's greed. And Tom had been part of that collateral damage. Tom, I didn't know, Richard whispers, his voice barely audible. Tom's eyes narrow. You didn't know, or you didn't care. The accusation hangs in the air between them, heavier than the silence that follows. Richard is torn apart by guilt, his entire sense of self beginning to crack. For the first time, he sees himself not as the powerful millionaire he thought he was, but as the product of a legacy of corruption and exploitation. Tom stands tall, his presence almost overwhelming. You don't get to pretend you're the victim here, Richard. Your family's actions destroyed my father's life, and now it's your turn to face the consequences. Everything between them changes in that instant. The dynamic that had once been defined by Richard's sense of superiority, his belief in his own invincibility, is shattered. In a cruel twist of fate, the person he thought of as a mere adversary, a pawn in his grand game, has become the one holding all the power. Tom is no longer the one seeking revenge, he's the one in control. Richard, the man who had once wielded power over everyone around him, is now powerless. His wealth, his status, his influence, all of it has been reduced to nothing in the face of this truth. The man who walked into this penthouse confident and unshaken is now a shell of himself. He's lost everything, and all that's left is the weight of his guilt. Tom turns to leave, pausing at the door. I've won, Richard. But this isn't about the bet anymore. It's about redemption. And you? He pauses, his voice growing colder. You'll never be the same. As Tom walks out, Richard is left alone, standing in the ruins of his own life. The walls that once held his empire together now feel like the very thing closing in on him, suffocating him with the truth of his past. The days that follow the confrontation with Tom feel like an endless descent into madness for Richard. The truth weighs on him like a crushing boulder, the guilt gnawing at him, hollowing him out from within. Every moment of quiet reflection brings a fresh wave of realization, a deeper understanding of the devastation his actions have caused. He thought he was in control, he thought he was the one pulling the strings. But now, in the stark light of the truth, he sees himself for what he truly is, a man who has been blind to his own sins, blind to the cost of his ambition. The reflection in his bathroom mirror feels foreign, as if the person staring back at him is someone else entirely. His once pristine world, built on a foundation of manipulation and greed, now seems like a house of cards ready to collapse. His mind replays the events over and over, Tom's words echoing in his head. "You've been played." Richard's hands shake as he pours himself a glass of whiskey, trying to numb the pain, but it doesn't help. The memories are too vivid, the guilt too raw. There's a constant feeling of suffocation, a sense that he's running out of time to fix everything, but deep down, he knows that time has already run out. The empire he built, the relationships he thought he controlled, are all slipping through his fingers like sand. And then there's her, Lisa, the woman he once saw as a prize, a trophy to be won, now seems like a constant reminder of his failures. Every time he looks at her, he sees the woman whose life his actions destroyed. She isn't the same person anymore. She's colder, harder, and she's no longer playing by his rules. And that terrifies him more than anything else. The walls of Richard's world are crumbling. His empire, once a shining monument to his success, now seems fragile and unstable. The stock prices for his company are plummeting, his business decisions are being called into question by board members, and his most trusted colleagues are beginning to pull away. They no longer look at him with the same reverence they once did. They see him for what he truly is, a man who built his wealth on the backs of others' suffering. Richard tries to make calls, smooth things over, but the truth has already seeped into the cracks of his world. It's too late to fix anything. His financial advisor, a man who had been loyal for years, calls him into his office, his face grim. "Richard, you need to face the reality of the situation. The company is hemorrhaging money, and your personal life is a liability at this point. People are starting to question your judgment, your integrity." The words cut through Richard like a knife. His empire, built on years of ruthless ambition, is now crumbling beneath him. He had once believed that wealth and power were enough to shield him from the consequences of his actions, but now he realizes just how fragile that illusion was. Even his personal life has turned into a constant reminder of his failures. Lisa, once his wife, is no longer the same woman he married. The warmth that had once defined their relationship is gone, replaced by a cold distance. She looks at him now not with love or affection, but with contempt, as if she can't even stand the sight of him. The damage his caused to her, to the life they once shared, is irreversible. No amount of wealth or status can fix what's been broken. He thought that by winning the bet, he would prove his worth, that he would finally get the respect he deserved. But all it has done is show him how small and insignificant he truly is in the grand scheme of things. The antagonist's power. Tom's power is undeniable now. The tables have completely turned. Richard is no longer the one in control. In fact, he's not even a player in this game anymore. Tom holds all the cards, and Richard is left scrambling, desperate to reclaim what is lost. The power dynamic has shifted so completely that Richard doesn't even recognize the person he's become. He's no longer the confident, arrogant millionaire who could bend the world to his will. Now, he's a man struggling to hold on to what little is left. Tom's influence stretches far beyond their personal vendetta. It's now woven into the very fabric of Richard's life. Tom has systematically dismantled everything Richard once took for granted. Every time Richard tries to take a step forward, Tom is there, pulling the rug out from under him. His business deals are failing. His reputation is in tatters, and every person who was once in his inner circle is now either turning against him or quietly distancing themselves. And Tom, is thriving. He's not just winning the game, he's reshaping the entire playing field. Richard watches helplessly as the man who once seemed like an adversary now stands at the pinnacle, his grip on power tightening with every passing day. Lisa, too, has shifted allegiances. She's no longer the woman Richard thought he could manipulate with his wealth and influence. She's aligned herself with Tom, not out of revenge or spite, but because she now sees the truth about Richard, about everything he's done. She no longer plays by his rules, and that is perhaps the most painful part of it all. As Richard watches Lisa's loyalty shift, he realizes that he's lost her for good. The woman he once loved, the woman he thought he could control, has slipped beyond his reach, and there's nothing he can do to bring her back. She has chosen to stand with Tom, and in doing so, has taken the last shred of power Richard had left. Desperation sets in. Richard tries everything he can think of to regain control, but every attempt only makes things worse. He calls meetings with his business partners, promising to turn things around. He pleads with Lisa, apologizing for his mistakes, but his words fall flat. She doesn't even look at him the same way anymore. "I'm sorry, Lisa," Richard says one night, his voice shaky with emotion as they sit across from each other in their dimly lit living room. I never meant for any of this to happen. I was wrong. I thought I could fix everything, but I see now that I can't. Lisa remains silent, her gaze unwavering. She's heard it all before. Her eyes are cold, unreadable. It's too late for apologies, Richard, she replies flatly. The damage is done. You've hurt too many people, including yourself, and nothing you say will change that. Richard's desperation grows. He throws himself into his work, making frantic calls, trying to salvage his company, his reputation. But no one is listening anymore. His business decisions are being undermined, his contacts cutting ties, and the vultures are circling. He throws more money at problems, thinking that will fix things, but it only makes everything worse. The cracks in his empire widen. With each passing day, Richard becomes more unhinged. He yells at his employees, pushes away anyone who tries to help, and isolates himself further. He can't sleep, he can't eat, he can't think straight. His entire world, once so carefully constructed, is now falling apart in ways he never thought possible. And through it all, Tom stands there, an almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips, watching it all unfold. The once mighty millionaire is now a shell of himself. Desperate, broken, and powerless, Richard can only watch as everything he built disintegrates, knowing that no matter what he does, he will never be able to undo the damage. The night is thick with tension as Richard walks through the grand doors of his penthouse. The world outside seems to be moving at a different pace. His world, however, has slowed to a crawl, each second stretching longer than the last. His empire, his wealth, his relationships, all of it feels like it's slipping through his fingers. But he's not just facing the collapse of his fortune anymore. What hurts the most is the realization that everything he once held dear, the respect, the admiration, the control, has been taken from him. And there is only one person to blame. Tom. He can hear the faint sound of footsteps approaching from behind, and before he even turns around, he knows who it is. Lisa, the woman he thought he could control, the woman he once loved, now standing on the other side of the divide he created between them. She steps into view, her face expressionless, her eyes cold and distant. It's as if she's already moved on, leaving Richard in the dust of his own making. You've lost everything, she says, her voice low and steady. You're nothing now. The words cut through him like a knife. For a moment, he stands frozen, the full weight of her statement sinking in. This isn't just about his money anymore, it's about his identity. Richard Cross, the man who prided himself on being in control, who believed that he could fix everything with power and money, is now standing on the precipice of ruin. And the worst part, he knows that it's all his fault. He takes a shaky breath, forcing himself to meet her gaze. I didn't think it would go this far, he admits, his voice breaking under the weight of his own words. I thought I could change things. I thought I could make everything better. Lisa's lips curl into a thin smile, a mixture of pity and contempt. You can't change what you've done, Richard. You played the game, and now you're the one who's lost. You were never in control. Her words hit him like a thunderclap. You were never in control. For the first time, Richard sees the full picture. He's not the man who outwits others. He's not the man who calls the shots. He's the man who's been played all along. Tom had seen through him from the very beginning, and it's only now, when it's too late, that Richard can admit it to himself. The ultimate consequence. Richard stands there, lost. The confrontation he's been dreading has finally come, but instead of feeling empowered, he's overwhelmed by the emptiness that surrounds him. Everything he's worked for, everything he thought he could control, is gone. His money, his status, his relationships, everything is slipping through his fingers like sand. But the worst part of it all isn't his ruined fortune or the failure of his business. It's the realization that he's destroyed the only thing that truly mattered to him, Lisa. Her words ring in his ears. You're nothing now. She's right. He's nothing. The man he once was, the man who thought he could bend the world to his will, has vanished. In his place is a broken shell of a man, an empty suit, a hollow soul who's left to pick up the pieces of a life that never truly belonged to him. He tries to speak, but his words come out as a rasp. I can fix this, Lisa. I can fix everything. But she just shakes her head. You don't get it, do you? You can't fix anything. Not anymore. Everything's broken, Richard. You broke it. The finality of her words stabs deep into his chest. There's no coming back from this. No apology, no amount of money, no act of contrition will fix the mess he's made. He's destroyed everything. And the worst part, he can't even blame anyone else. He has no one to point to but himself. As he stands there, feeling the weight of his own failures, he hears the distant sound of his phone vibrating on the counter. He doesn't need to look to know it's another call from his business partner, another warning, another sign that his empire is crumbling further. But he can't bring himself to answer. There's nothing left to salvage. Everything he built is going down in flames. And through it all, Tom stands in the background, watching. It's almost as if he's enjoying this, savoring Richard's downfall. Character's reflection on the journey. As the conversation fades and the room falls silent, Richard's mind begins to spiral. This was always going to happen. He was always going to lose. It had been clear from the start, even before the bet was placed, that this wasn't a game he could win. But he had ignored all the warnings, all the red flags, all the signs that told him to stop. He had believed that he could cheat fate, manipulate the world around him, and emerge victorious. He had believed that control was everything. But now he sees the truth. He wasn't in control. He never was. The man who stood at the top of the world, the millionaire who thought he could bend reality to his will, has been brought to his knees. His wealth is meaningless now. His status, once so important, is just an illusion. The only thing left is the bitter taste of his own hubris, the gnawing guilt that will follow him for the rest of his life. Richard stands at the window of his penthouse, staring out at the city below. The lights of the city shimmer in the distance, but they seem so far away, so irrelevant. He wonders how he could have ever been so blind. The things that mattered to him, money, power, control, were never the things that would bring him peace. They were distractions, illusions to hide from the truth that he had lost everything. He thinks back on the journey that brought him here, the bet, the power plays, the lies. He had thought he was playing a game, but it wasn't a game. It was his life, and in trying to win, he had lost everything that truly mattered. He turns back to Lisa, who is still standing there, her face unreadable. For a moment, he wishes he could go back. He wishes he could undo everything. Take back the bet. Take back the lies. Take back the choices that led him here. But it's too late. He can't go back. The damage is done. And now, as he stands in the ruins of his life, he understands what he had failed to see all along. Power, control, and wealth are nothing in the face of the things that truly matter. It's love, respect, and honesty that shape a man's life. And he had sacrificed all of that for a fleeting moment of triumph. He's no longer the man who thought he could control everything. He's a broken man, forced to live with the consequences of his greed, his arrogance, and his misplaced belief in his own power. Closure of the story. And so, the game that Richard thought he could win ends in devastation. What started as a bet, a simple challenge to control his fate, turned into a spiral of greed, manipulation, and betrayal. In his attempt to reshape his life, he lost the very things that mattered the most: love, respect, and trust. Power, control, and wealth, these were the tools he believed could grant him victory. But in the end, they amounted to nothing. The stakes were much higher than he ever imagined, and in his arrogance, he failed to see the true cost of his actions. The question now lingers: will he ever recover? Can someone like Richard, who has built his life on a foundation of lies and power struggles, ever truly heal and rebuild? Or is he doomed to live with the guilt and the consequences of his decisions forever? The story reminds us that no amount of money or control can shield us from the inevitable fallout of our choices. There are moments in life when the game changes, when the consequences of our actions become undeniable, and we are left to face the truth of what we've done. Richard's downfall is a reminder that the price of playing with power and manipulation can be far steeper than we ever anticipate. Engagement and viewer call to action. Now that you've seen the story unfold, we want to hear your thoughts. What do you think? Can someone like Richard change? Is there hope for redemption after all he's lost, or is he forever trapped in the web of his own making? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more stories that explore the deep complexities of human relationships, power dynamics, and the consequences of our actions, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. share this video with your friends, and of course, hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned for more thought-provoking content, and remember, sometimes the hardest lessons come from the most unexpected places.